Anxiety is what I get asked about probably the most, whether that be performance anxiety in a game, anxiety coming into a tackle or contact, anxiety about just how you're going to play before the game, even in training, the anxiety to perform in training. So, in different ways, it's probably one of the most common, if not the most common question that I'm asked. So, people talk about how the anxiety is limiting them. For example, maybe they can't transfer the performance and training to a game, or even vice versa, or the anxiety becomes so much that they block up, the fear overcomes them, they don't want to play, they don't want to be there, they'd rather be anywhere else. When they're going to engage in a tackle, they have anxiety. When they go into contact, whatever it is, in different scenarios, we're talking about the same thing. Same thing. So that's anxiety. And so I wanted to touch on that a bit here. So, how can you overcome the anxiety? Or another way that I like to look at it, how can you live with the anxiety? Now, the most important thing from my perspective is if you can live with that anxiety. So you're not trying to beat it, you're not trying to move away from it, you're not trying to create something different or create the opposite, which might be feeling good, being positive. You're actually going to think, how can you live with that anxiety? So, how can you what I think the most important thing is how can you do it moment to moment in your daily life, and then how will that transfer through to the rugby field? So there's lots of different techniques that you can try, lots of different tools that you can use. But as I kind of touched on in my last video, with mental skills and mindset, you're trying to change habits that you've built up. Some of us from young babies. Some of the habits passed down from our parents that we've picked up from our friends. So it can be a lifetime of habits that you're trying to deal with here. So hopefully you can see straight away what that does in my mind. It says, I think that you need to be very passionate and put a lot of effort into trying to overcome or live with this anxiety that you might have. And yeah, that's the foundation of it. It's not a quick fix. If you're just looking for okay, I'm going to do positive self-talk, I'm going to use imagery and hope that that's going to change everything, it probably won't. You've got to go really into it. You've got to go into it as deep as you can, day to day, moment to moment. So the start of that is self-awareness, the awareness of who you are, and in mental skills and mindset training, it's like aerobic fitness to conditioning. For rugby, you don't really have much without that awareness, because everything starts with being aware of who you are, aware of your thoughts and feelings, aware of how you act in different situations, aware of the habits that you have. And then from there, it's with this awareness that you can start to unravel them. Okay, you can start really look inwards and look into the uncomfortable, look into things that naturally as human beings and as a society we want to move away from and try and avoid. So that's why anxiety, I feel that I probably get them as many questions as I do, because it is the uncomfortable, and naturally we try and move away. We look for the easy way out. We look for the quick fixes. A lot of us might take things like just use timeout or drugs or whatever it is to cope with that. So it's really difficult to look inwards and go into that uncomfortable world that all of us really have lived with from when we were born. Okay, so whether there's a genetic factor there, or the environment around us, that's something we've lived with, we've always had. And unless we've being trained or given the tools to at some stage look into that anxiety, then we've probably avoided it and always look for the easy way out. So if you're messaging me, guys, I hope the tools that I am giving you through and sort of passing on, that you are going in at 100% and trying them day in, day out, moment to moment, and it ain't just that quick fix, because it'll never work. So there's a number of different things that you can do. So the first thing I just touched on there was awareness, starting to be aware of your emotions when the anxiety arises within you. So it's an emotion, it's a feeling, it's an energy field within you. Start to be aware of it. And what you'll notice is that there's thoughts that accompany that anxiety. So as that awareness of the feeling comes up, there's certain thoughts. Okay, and the challenge is that as human beings, with the structure of society and time, we give continuity to that feeling of anxiety, because our thoughts lead to different thoughts, connect to similar thoughts. If we're going to work, for example, we're seeing certain people, okay, where the thoughts can still start to connect and grow. We're in certain environments that are the same. So the habits and the way that we behave day in, day out, they're really there built in, and anxiety can be there for sure as well. So it keeps coming up. Sometimes it might be the thought that comes first. So let's say it's a thought, you're going to training and you know that it's tackle practice and you really get anxious with tackle practice. So as soon as you know that that's going to happen, the thoughts can start to arise and the feeling can come in, even if it's a week before the actual tackle practice. And we've got to live with that day in. We've got to sleep with that. Okay, we worry about it, and that's just part of the way that our brains are structured with thought. And we can get really caught up in it and feel really trapped. And that's where I get these messages from people that are very trapped. Okay, because we naturally continue things. It's a human response. It's a societal norm to do that. The structure of thought has done that. There's also, if we look at the way the brain's structured, naturally, if we go back thousands of years, we're out in the jungle, anxiety creeps up. It's a good thing. It's a mechanism to let us know there's a bit of danger. Okay, there might be a snake behind that tree. We've got to react. We've got to either fight or flight or run. Okay, so the problem now with where we are in society and in the modern era is our thoughts we see as real threats. Okay, most of the time they're not, but we can't distinguish them. Okay, we're at that stage where the thought and anxiety that we might feel, we see as a real threat. Okay, so we have a similar response, and we're in a state of stress. And some scientists say we're in a state of stress most of the time. So in other words, we have some sort of anxiety most of the time. So that's just a bit of background behind it. If you do have some sort of anxiety, again, just it should make you feel calm that all of us do as human beings. Okay, it's the nature of thought to create anxiety. Naturally, we're thinking back to the past or the future. That's where thought takes us in time. Okay, and there's a gap there, and that gap really is what anxiety is, because we are unsure of what's going to happen in the next moment. And the previous moment, we're unsure of how that's going to impact what's going to happen. Okay, so these gaps that thought creates is where the anxiety is built in. And then over time, we have patterns that we have in our lives, and they can become very crippling for a lot of us, because it comes to a point where you can barely control it. Okay, and obviously there leads to anxiety disorders, like OCD for one. But also it's just... perhaps if you're in a rugby team and you're quite anxious, you don't get on with the teammates, the coach, with what's happening, you're not comfortable, you're going to be anxious, and everything you do is going to trigger those memories. Okay, before practice, it's going to start to build up. And I know myself through my own experiences, if I'm getting anxious over something, then the thoughts start compounding. Okay, and then it comes and you really just don't want to be there. So to address that, guys, it's the awareness. Really practicing awareness, being in the moment, being present. And the more aware you are of your emotions and the thoughts, if you can just see them, okay, even if it's very briefly, then it's not going to be so automatic. And that really is the key. So you're not going to, for example, if someone you really dislike is around, okay, they say something, usually straight away you might get a feeling of anxiety or be upset or anger, and then the thoughts come and you react. It's pretty instant. Okay, but the more space and awareness you have, the more sort of you're giving an interval of time between the thought and emotion. Okay, and then over time you start to see that you can not continue the thought. Okay, or when you really fully watch the emotion, then it can go. You see that it falls away. And that's the power of presence and being in the moment, and how I talk about that energy of being in the moment can overcome the mechanisms of the mind, such as thought and emotion. Okay, so it's a long haul, and it takes practice, it takes time. But the great thing is that if you can do this in your everyday life, just find moments where you can be really present in the moment, still, and just watch, learn about yourself, be very aware. and you start to really build up those intervals of not just reacting all the time or living in habit, then you'll notice you'll bring in a different energy to the moment, to the life that you're living. Okay, and then you start to use those same tools in rugby. So when you're in training and you have a tackle practice coming up, when you start to get that anxiety, get a bit sweaty, heart rate comes up, you can just be still, watch it come. Thoughts will be there probably, but then you might do a tackle and they'll fall away. Okay, that leads me into a good structure and a good positive comment or positive reinforcement that you can use, and that is reframing what you're doing as a challenge. I find personally that it works really well. So if you're going into something that usually you're a little bit uncomfortable about, just straight away, just reframe it as a challenge and an opportunity. I know it's what the All Blacks talk a lot about, like pretty much every time Steve Hansen talks or someone in the team talks, they're talking about this. Okay, so instead of looking at it as a threat or being scared or what might go wrong, you reframe that whole thing as a challenge and an opportunity. You walk towards it, and then that same energy is there, that anxiety is there, but it's slightly different, and you walk towards it as you're facing the challenge. Okay, and when you start to get these couple of things come together. Okay, so you're aware, you walk towards a challenge, something like using movement to be in the moment. Breathing, so your breath is an extremely powerful tool to bring you into the moment. So just naturally breathing in, holding your breath, and then you just exhale out. Okay, your energy is in your body, it's in the moment, it's away from thinking. Okay, and it's usually away from the emotional side as well, the anxiety. It's why it's such a great tool, and why a lot of professional sport teams use breathing as a tool to center themselves and bring them back into the moment and to be calm. So you have these tools, so you develop that awareness, being in the moment, using movement and breathing to stay in the moment, reframing the uncomfortable as a challenge and an opportunity. Okay, and over time, if you really work on these things, and by work I mean do them every day as often as you can. Okay, then the anxiety that you usually have starts to get a different feeling. Okay, you begin to overcome it. You don't just overcome it, you live with it. Okay, so it's not about denying it or moving away or saying instead of anxiety I'm going to be positive. It's about the energy you're bringing and being in the moment, the stillness, the anxiety. Even if it's still there, it doesn't really control or affect you so much. And that's the point you get to. So you can then transfer that to a game. And when you can bring that stillness and being in the moment, that calmness, then again, the anxiety is going to come. Okay, you say these guys in the Rugby World Cup, the team's there, it's going to come. Okay, there's lots of different factors, of course, but if you're comfortable with your vision, your purpose, what you're trying to do, you're process driven, then the anxiety is there, but you can use it positively. Okay, it starts to aid your performance. Right, you start to embrace it. It starts to facilitate. In sports psychology, it's called facilitative anxiety. Facilitates your performance. So it gives you that positive energy that you can use. And it comes back to what I said about the survival instinct that we have had programmed in us, in the old part of our reptilian brain, and that's about fight or flight. Okay, so you're starting to walk towards it in more of a fight. Okay, more of a positive edge. That you tackle things with. So and this is for anyone, any athlete, whether you think you're struggling with it or not. Anxiety or the uncomfortable is something that anyone in life, even if you're not an athlete, any sport that you can do to really change your energy, change your vibe, and change who you are as a person. Okay, and then this sport, everything else just falls onto that, because you really are connecting to a higher source of energy and consciousness when you are in the moment, that state of flow. And same as a great musician, you can see them, and you can see that state of real clarity and flow there, being in the zone. So sports people, musicians, artists, poets, whatever it is, they're all sort of, it's the same thing, same vibe that they're accessing. So just to recap, guys, that anxiety, Awareness is huge. You've got to start there. Start to really use your deep breathing. Routines, okay, another thing which are excellent. Being well prepared, okay, it's a really great tool. It helps you feel familiar, feel in control of what you're doing. Okay, your motivation is more intrinsic that way. And yeah, the walking towards it. So reframing things as a challenge and walking towards it is excellent. So try these things in your daily life, not just rugby, and then naturally they will your rugby will change because of who you are changes internally. Then whatever the external environment is going to change to match that, and that's just a fact. So that's just the way it is. Get in touch if you have any specific questions, guys. Yeah, and I hope you can try out some of these things. Again, it's the same stuff I talk about in my post, but I did want to get a little bit more depth with quick video here. So thank you.